The air in the ballroom was thick with a symphony of my own design. It smelled of 1,000 blush-pink roses and the crisp, sweet effervescence of vintage champagne. Low, melodic strings of a cello quartet drifted from a corner, weaving through the gentle hum of laughter and the delicate clinking of crystal flutes. Flickering candlelight danced across the faces of our friends, painting the room in soft, forgiving hues of gold and amber. This was supposed to be the overture to the rest of my life, the happiest day I had ever known. And for a perfect, shimmering hour, it was. I stood with my back pressed against Daniel, his arms a familiar fortress around my waist, his chin resting on my shoulder. For 6 years, he had been my constant, my quiet co-conspirator in building a life that felt authentic and true. He was the man I loved, the man whose gentle strength had taught me that my own was not a flaw. People drifted towards us in a steady, smiling stream, their congratulations like warm honey. We were the center of this beautiful, curated universe. But beyond the perimeter of our joy, in the shadows cast by the flickering candles, my family was meticulously plotting my annihilation. I just didn't know it yet. The first tremor of the earthquake to come had happened 2 weeks prior. The battlefield was, as it so often was, our family kitchen. My mother summoned me with her signature fake gentle voice, the one that was always a prelude to an unreasonable demand. It was a voice coated in sugar to hide the poison underneath. She was standing by the marble island, adjusting a heavy gold necklace at her throat, a nervous tick that was more like a warrior checking her armor before a charge. "Ava, honey," she began, "you know your brother's wedding is just around the corner." I felt a familiar tension coil in my stomach. I knew where this was going. I had been foolishly hoping they had forgotten. And she continued, her eyes avoiding mine as she feigned an interest in a smudge on the countertop. "You haven't really done anything with that $100,000 Grandpa left you. For your wedding." The coiling tension tightened into a knot of ice. I stiffened, my posture becoming a shield. "Because I'm saving it, Mom. For my wedding. For my future with Daniel." She finally looked at me, her smile a sickly sweet, painted-on grimace. "Well, Justin's wedding is first, dear. And he and Tiffany have their hearts absolutely set on that all-inclusive resort in Cancun. The presidential suite, the private beach, it's a whole affair. It would mean the world to your brother, to all of us, if you just let them borrow the money." I blinked, the sheer audacity of it stealing my breath. "Borrow? You want me to give my entire wedding fund to my brother for his honeymoon?" "Not give," a gruff voice interjected from the doorway. My father filled the frame, his arms crossed, his presence immediately sucking the warmth from the room. "Just lend it. It's for family. You and Daniel can have a simple backyard thing. You've never been the flashy type anyway." His words were a dismissal, not just of my desires, but of my very identity. He had summarized my quiet, thoughtful nature as a lack of worth. I stared at them, 2 sides of the same cruel coin. You want me to dismantle my future so his can be more extravagant. You want me to have a backyard thing so he can have a destination wedding. My mother's face, stripped of its saccharine mask, soured into a scowl. "It's not about you, Ava. It's never just about you. Your brother is the only son. He's marrying a Thompson. Do you understand what that means? They have connections, real influence. This wedding is an investment in our family's future. And what about Daniel?" I shot back, my voice trembling with a nascent rage. "What about me? Am I not your family?" "You'll understand when you're older," Dad said, his tone cold and final. It was his classic shutdown, the verbal equivalent of a door slamming in my face. He turned and walked away, the conversation declared over, my dissent irrelevant. But for the first time in my life, I didn't crumble. I didn't concede. I held my ground. The next 2 weeks were a master class in psychological warfare. The house became a pressure cooker of resentment. They tried guilt, my mother leaving pamphlets for cheaper, local wedding venues on my pillow. They tried manipulation, my father making pointed comments about family loyalty over silent, agonizing dinners. My mother even weaponized her tears, calling my aunts and cousins to lament how her own daughter was refusing to help her poor brother in his time of need. At family gatherings, I was met with a barrage of side eyes and silent judgments. I could feel their whispers crawling over my skin like insects. Daniel was my rock. He'd hold my hand under the table, his thumb stroking my knuckles. "You don't owe them your future, Ava," he'd murmur into my hair at night. "You don't owe anyone the life you've built for us." And for once, I listened to the voice that valued me instead of the ones that only sought to use me. I chose myself. I chose us. I never, in my wildest nightmares, imagined the price of that choice. The night of the engagement party, the world was perfect again. Then my brother, Justin, arrived. He was an hour late, his tie askew, reeking of whiskey and entitlement. He tossed his blazer onto a chair occupied by one of Daniel's elderly aunts, offering a sloppy, unapologetic grin as if he were the guest of honor. My father, who had been anxiously scanning the room, saw him and gave a subtle, approving nod. A silent signal passed between them. Then my father's eyes found me, standing by the towering, five-tiered cake, Daniel's arm securely around my waist. The warmth in his expression vanished, replaced by a thunderous darkness. He began to approach, his steps slow and deliberate, a predator trying to feign calm while his veins pulsed with rage. "We need to talk," he said, his voice a low growl that was barely audible over the music. I tilted my head. In the middle of my engagement party. "You are embarrassing this family," he hissed, his fingers suddenly clamping around my upper arm like a vice. His grip was brutal, shocking. Daniel immediately stepped forward, his body a protective barrier. "Sir, with all due respect, this isn't the time or the place." My dad shoved him, a surprisingly forceful push that sent Daniel stumbling back a step. "Stay out of this, boy. This is family business." The cellist's bow faltered. The music stuttered and died. A hush fell over the room as every single guest turned to face the unfolding drama. My father's voice, no longer a whisper, boomed across the silent space. "You selfish, ungrateful brat." He was shouting now, his face a mottled, furious red. "You owe your brother everything. This party, this ring, this life, you don't deserve any of it." I tried to pull away, but his grip on my wrist tightened, his knuckles white. The smell of his anger, a sour, metallic scent, filled my nostrils. His eyes were wild, unhinged. "Give him the damn money, Ava, or I swear to God," and then it happened. The world seemed to slow, the sound dropping away into a muted roar. His hand swung through the air, an open palm moving with vicious speed. The crack of it connecting with my cheek was sharp and obscene, a sound that desecrated the sacred quiet of the room. My head snapped to the side with the force of the blow. My pearl earring, a gift from Daniel, went flying, arcing through the air before skittering across the polished floor. Time stopped. For a heartbeat, there was nothing but the searing, radiating heat on my skin and the stunned silence of 50 people. I saw my mother gasp, but it wasn't a gasp of horror for her daughter. It was a small, sharp intake of breath born of pure social embarrassment. Her primary concern was the spectacle. My brother, Justin, let out a short, nervous laugh and took a deep, fortifying sip of his drink, his eyes glinting with a kind of sick triumph. Daniel rushed to me, his hands gently cupping my face, his own body trembling with a fury so profound it was almost silent. "You just hit your daughter," he said, his voice shaking with disbelief and rage. "You hit her on her engagement night. She brought it on herself." My dad snapped, his chest heaving. "She's ungrateful. We raised her, we clothed her, we fed her, and this is how she repays us. By hoarding what is rightfully her brother's." I stood there, my hand now pressed to my burning cheek, staring at the man who was my father. In that single, violent moment, he had not just broken my skin, he had shattered the very last, fragile piece of my heart that still wanted to belong to them. The part of me that had craved their approval, their love, their acceptance, disintegrated into dust. And I did not cry. Not a single tear. A strange, cold calm washed over me. It was the calm of a battlefield after the decisive, bloody shot has been fired. The war was over. I had lost, but in doing so, I had won my freedom. I turned to Daniel, my voice a whisper that cut through the tension. "Let's go." We walked out of that room, leaving behind the shattered illusion of our perfect night. The silence that followed us was deafening, a thick, heavy blanket of judgment and scandal. I could feel the whispers starting, the story beginning to bloom like a dark, ugly bruise on the skin of the evening. But I didn't care. I didn't care about the gossip, the cake, the guests, or the life I was leaving behind in that room, because something inside of me had snapped. It had broken clean in two, and in its place, something powerful and unyielding had begun to grow. They wanted to take my future. Fine. I would simply take theirs, and I knew exactly where to start. The next morning, my cheek was a canvas of bruised purple and yellow, but it wasn't the physical sting that haunted me. It was the profound, echoing silence. No calls, no texts, no voicemails filled with frantic apologies, not from my mother, not from my father, not even a gloating message from Justin. To them, the incident at the party was not a transgression to be atoned for, it was a punishment I had deserved. For them, it was already over. Daniel made me eggs and poured coffee, his movements gentle, his attempts at normalcy a heartbreaking testament to his love. But I could see the rigid line of his jaw, the storm of anger still brewing in his eyes. "You have to do something, Ava," he said softly, his hand covering mine on the table. "This isn't just about a slap anymore. This is about them believing they have the right to humiliate and control you. If you don't stop them now, they will never, ever stop." I looked at him and nodded slowly, the motion precise. "But I already have a plan," I said, my voice devoid of the tremor it had held for weeks. I had been holding on to a secret, a piece of my grandfather's lasting love and wisdom. It was a secret tucked away in a fireproof lockbox, a piece of paperwork my parents had long since forgotten, if they ever knew it existed at all. My grandfather, a man who saw the rot in his own children's hearts, had left me the $100,000 for my wedding, yes. But that wasn't all. In the final year of his life, with a quiet foresight that now felt like a prophecy, he had legally and irrevocably transferred the deed of their house, his original property, the house I grew up in, to me. He had sat me down in his study, the room smelling of old books and leather. "One day, Ava," he'd said, his voice raspy but firm, "they'll forget your blood runs in their veins. They'll see you not as a daughter but as an obstacle. When they do, you'll need this." He slid the folder across the desk. "You'll need this to remind them and to remind yourself that you are not powerless." Back then, at 19, I hadn't fully understood the weight of his words. Now they were a clarion call. I retrieved the file from its locked drawer. There it was, crisp and official. Property deed. Title holder, Ava Rose Jennings. Signed, stamped, notarized, and completely, devastatingly untouched. They had lived in my house for 20 years, assuming it was still tied up in my grandfather's estate, or perhaps that it had passed to them through some unspoken patriarchal right. But my grandfather, my wise, wonderful grandfather, had bypassed them entirely. He never trusted their greed. He had trusted me. My first call was to my lawyer, a sharp, fiercely compassionate woman named Lenora. She reviewed the scanned documents with a practiced eye. Her email came back within the hour. "Everything is ironclad, Ava. You have full and sole legal authority to sell this home, to mortgage it, or to evict any and all occupants. Just say the word." But I didn't say the word. Not yet. Revenge, I was learning, is a dish best served not cold, but with agonizing, drawn-out suspense. I wanted them to see the guillotine long before it fell. First, I had Lenora draft a formal notice. It arrived at their house in an elegant, gold-embossed envelope, looking like a high-end wedding invitation. It simply notified them of a pending change in ownership review for their property address. No threat, no explanation, just a single, ominous sentence designed to ignite their paranoia. 2 days later, my mother called, her voice a whip-crack of anxiety. "Ava, what is this ridiculous envelope? Some kind of legal junk mail?" "Oh, that," I said, my voice light and breezy. "It's just about the house." She scoffed, a sound of pure derision. "Don't be absurd. We've lived in this house for 25 years. You can't just—" "I can, actually," I interrupted, the steel returning to my tone. "I own it. Grandpa left it to me, not to you, not to Dad, me." The silence on the other end of the line was so absolute I could hear her frantic, panicked breathing. Then her voice, stripped of all its arrogance, came out as a horrified whisper. You don't mean to evict us." I let a small, bitter smile touch my lips. "I mean to give you the exact same amount of consideration you gave me when Dad slapped me in front of 50 of our closest friends and family, and you stood there and watched as if I deserved it." The guilt came next, the predictable, desperate play. "But where will we go? Your father's health, his heart. He isn't what he used to be. We've built our entire life in this house. And I was building mine," I said, my voice dropping to an icy calm. "Until you tried to gut it for a destination wedding for your precious son. Until you stood by and watched your husband assault your daughter. You didn't care about my life then. Why should I care about yours now?" That's when the screaming started, a torrent of vitriol and rage. She called me ungrateful, a monster, evil. She shrieked that she wished she had never had me. I held the phone away from my ear, listening to the sound of her self-immolation, letting her burn herself out until she was left breathless and gasping. Then I brought the phone back to my lips. "You have 30 days, I said. Click. But I wasn't finished. The masterstroke was yet to come. Against Daniel's better judgment, we attended Justin and Tiffany's wedding in Cancun. We were only invited because they didn't want the extended family asking questions, and I hadn't made my move public yet. I showed up not in a demure dress, but in a sleek, powerful, bone-white pantsuit. My cheek had healed, but my eyes were colder than ice. At the reception, my brother, flushed with champagne and victory, cornered me by the bar. He smirked, the picture of smug condescension. "Glad you could finally come to your senses and show your face," he slurred. I leaned in close, my lips almost touching his ear, my voice a venomous whisper. "I hope you enjoy the honeymoon. I truly do. Savor every single second of it. Because when you get back, Mom and Dad won't have a home to welcome you to." He laughed, a loud, braying sound. Then he looked at my face, at the dead seriousness in my eyes, and the laughter died in his throat. His face went pale beneath his tan. 2 weeks later, while they were sunning themselves on a Mexican beach, the final documents went through. I sold the house, and not to just anyone. I sold it to a commercial developer who had been trying to buy up the block for years. Their plan was to bulldoze the entire property and erect a modern, multi-unit complex, total erasure. The eviction notice, this time on bright red paper, was posted on their front door. Property sold. All occupants must vacate within 14 days. My phone began to ring, a ceaseless, frantic buzzing. My father, my mother, Justin, aunts, uncles. I ignored every call. When they finally showed up at my apartment, their faces tear-streaked and desperate, I let them stand on the lawn outside my building, refusing to buzz them in. I opened my window and looked down at them. "You think this is fair?" My dad shouted up at me, his voice cracking with desperation and rage. "No," I called down, my voice clear and steady. "But neither was slapping your daughter at her own engagement party. Neither was choosing your son over your daughter for 28 years. Neither was trying to steal a dead man's gift to me. We gave you everything." He growled, his face contorted in a mask of impotent fury. "You took everything," I corrected him calmly. "Now I'm just returning the favor." They begged. For the first time in my entire life, I heard my parents beg me for something. They pleaded, they cried, they promised. But the part of me that could have been moved by their tears had been murdered by my father's hand 2 months earlier. I had already moved on. I watched them from my window as they finally gave up, their shoulders slumped in defeat. I watched them drive away, their entire life of comfort and entitlement packed into the back of Justin's rented SUV. It wasn't just revenge, it was justice. It was a balancing of the scales, and it was only the beginning. 3 months after I sold the house, my life had found a new, quiet rhythm. The world, or what was left of my world, assumed I was fine. They saw the resolute set of my jaw, the new apartment Daniel and I had found, and concluded that I had moved on. But trauma isn't a debt that gets settled when a deed is filed and the locks are changed. It's a ghost that lingers. There were nights I lay awake, the phantom sting still on my cheek, and questioned myself. Had I gone too far? Was my righteous fury just a mask for a wound so deep it would never heal? Then the letter arrived. The envelope was a cheap, plain white, addressed in my mother's spidery, agitated handwriting. It had been sent via traditional mail, as if the shame and blame it contained were too heavy for a digital message. I let it sit on my granite countertop for 2 days, a silent, toxic monument. When I finally slit it open with a kitchen knife, the words inside were shards of glass. There was no apology, no flicker of remorse, just a litany of accusations wrapped in the guise of maternal love. "We raised you, we loved you. You are destroying this family out of pure spite. You sold our home, your childhood home, and now your father's health is declining rapidly because of the stress. You've made your point, Ava. Are you proud of yourself?" That night, Daniel and I built a small fire in the pit on our balcony. He stood beside me, a silent, solid presence, and handed me the lighter. I held the letter to the flame and watched my mother's poisoned words curl into black ash and float away into the night sky. He didn't need to say a word. His unwavering presence told me everything I needed to know. I wasn't wrong. I wasn't cruel. I was a survivor. The world kept turning, and it turned in the most unexpected of ways. 2 weeks later, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number from a New York area code. It was Gregory Harper, the charismatic CEO of a prestigious consulting firm where I had interned in college. "Ava," he said, his voice as warm and commanding as I remembered, "I've been following your career. Your recent work with that nonprofit, the Housing Equity Project you spearheaded, it's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. We're opening a new branch in Seattle, focused on sustainable urban development. I want you to lead it." I nearly dropped the phone, the words not computing. You're offering me an executive role?" "Yes," he said with no hesitation. "Full departmental control, full C-suite salary, and full creative freedom. The job is yours if you want it." I took it. That night, Daniel and I drank our champagne, and started packing boxes for our new life in Seattle. As I taped up the last box, I glanced around our apartment. I wouldn't miss the place itself, but I would forever be grateful for what it symbolized, the first home I had built entirely on my own terms. A few months into my new role, the company held a major gala in Los Angeles. I was asked to be a keynote speaker. I returned to the city that held my ghosts, unaware that my speech would detonate a small corner of the internet. I stood on that stage under the bright, hot lights, and I told my story. Not every ugly, personal detail, but enough. I spoke about generational betrayal, about the dangerous myth of unconditional family love, and about how sometimes the very people who raise you will try their hardest to erase you. When I finished, the cavernous ballroom was utterly silent for a moment, and then it exploded in applause. It was a wave of sound, of understanding, of validation. Later, as I was waiting for the elevator, a young woman, no older than 22, stopped me. Her eyes were filled with tears. "Your story." "It saved me," she whispered. "My father made me cash out my college savings for my brother's law school tuition. He told me it was my duty. I thought I was the one who was selfish. I thought I was the problem. But hearing you, now I know I'm not." I pulled her into a hug, feeling the shudder of her relief. I hadn't known I needed to hear that, but it was a balm on a wound I didn't know was still open. My pain had found a purpose beyond my own survival. A year later, a real estate investment brought me back to my childhood town for a brief visit. As fate, or perhaps karma, would have it, I ran into my brother Justin outside a rundown strip mall. The golden boy was gone. He was gaunt, his expensive suit replaced by a frayed jacket, his eyes holding the dull, defeated look of a man who had lost his footing in the world. He blinked, startled, as he saw me step out of the black town car I'd hired. "So," he muttered, stuffing his hands in his pockets, "the rumors are true. Which ones?" I asked, a cool, placid smile on my face. "That I'm successful, or that I'm happy, that you sold the house just to prove a point?" I tilted my head, studying him. "No, Justin, I sold it because for my entire life, you and Mom and Dad proved your point first, that I was second, that I was lesser, that my future was a resource for you to plunder. I just finally decided to listen." He looked away, unable to meet my gaze. "Mom's been crashing on my couch for a year. It's been hell." "That must be fun," I said, my voice soft but sharp as a razor. "Maybe next time you demand a woman's life savings, you'll think twice." He flinched as if I'd slapped him. "You've really changed, Ava." "No," I said, taking a step closer, forcing him to look at me. "I haven't changed at all. You just grossly underestimated how quiet a woman can be when she's planning her comeback." He had no reply. There was nothing left to say. Back in Seattle, my life blossomed. With a portion of my own money and corporate sponsorship, I launched a foundation, a national initiative for survivors of familial, financial, and emotional abuse. I named it The Second Room, for all the daughters and sons who were told they would never be worthy of the first. At the grand opening, standing in a room filled with hope and resilience, I gave what I knew would be my final public speech on the matter. I was assaulted at my own engagement party. But that was not the day I broke. That was the day I began to rebuild. We are not what was done to us. We are what we build from the ashes. Applause, tears, and a profound sense of peace. My parents, I never saw them again. But sometimes, when the Seattle rain is tapping against my window, I imagine them driving through their old town. I imagine them passing the spot where their house, their monument to their own selfishness, once stood. And I imagine them seeing what stands there now, a beautiful, modern transitional home for single mothers and their children. A shelter, a sanctuary. It was paid for in full by an anonymous donation from the sale of the property. Paid for by the very fund they tried to steal from me. They had wanted to take my future. Instead, I had used their past to build a better future for countless others. And that, I realized, is the legacy I choose. Not revenge. Rebirth. Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where are you watching this video.